All right, so I'm going to do a little presentation on um, headers and a circumstance where a package won't build if we actually use some of the definitions that are provided in the headers by Haiku. And as far as I could tell, choice of how the headers work, to, to my mind, is a matter of personal preference, from what I could tell. It seems as though things can be changed, but they're not being changed because they're not POSIX, and so this is a situation where I'm going to try to build. I'm going to go through the process of building a package from the beginning to the end, in which it will initially fail because one of the headers is already defined some definition or a few definitions that the package wants or needs to use to build. And what I'm going to end up doing is actually editing my headers. And you actually would not have this option, I don't believe, at all if you were using Haiku Porter, because you wouldn't have write access to any of the files. And it was absolutely necessary to get this to build, and this package happens to be a dependency of Git. If you wanted to build Git, I'm trying in the process of Diger has patches for Git 2.1.0, and additionally, there's also at least one chat client that needs the P5-socket6 package that failed on me. And initially, I was puzzled as to how this could happen because it built before without any issues, and I'm pretty much getting the same kind of responses I had before, except for the fact when I have to add in the strings header. Well, this issue is definitely not related to the strings header, and what had happened is when I made this change, I actually wasn't careful to make a note of what the change was that I made, and so the end result was that I was under the impression that this package would just simply build, and it didn't, so I was surprised. And so now I'm looking into, what did I do that was unusual to get it to build? And I've since figured it out, so I'm going to do it on camera. I now have a successful build of the package. And it had nothing to do with the fact that the package had upgraded from version 6.0.23 to 6.0.25 from the time I originally built it and later on. It has everything to do with the syntax of the definitions that are provided in the headers that the latest people that are making this code that are apparently still developing it don't expect to see headers that look like ours, basically. Otherwise, scaling amongst all the operating systems that uses P5-socket or actually uses Git, the end result is it builds successfully in all those other operating systems, but not ours, and it's because of the headers, the way we have it. So I'm going to do something very unusual, and I wouldn't characterize this as anything that I could put up at Git as to solve anything, except for some instructions along with some procedures. And this is a situation where you can't even decide to just dump the headers in the local includes and everything's good. It doesn't really work that way. There are other headers that the Perl header is looking for relative to it, and so you get stuck in header hell and having to copy down a whole bunch of Perl headers unless you make an actual change to the Perl header that you've installed, of course, from Pkgsrc, the Pkgsrc is using, versus the Perl that may or may not be installed on your Haiku system. I haven't checked. It might come with it. It might not. Anyway, so without any further ado, first thing I'm going to do is just make sure that my package is no longer hanging out there in the work directory, and I'm going to do from a fresh start. And I have reverted back to the state things were in when I first attempted to build this. And so this is just one package that blocks other packages. It could block other packages. So, you know, if you can't do Git, then you can't do any of the Git varieties. So those are blocked out. I don't think any of their packages are going to be dependent on the CGI IRC client. But the point I'm going to make is that for the most part, the end user is really powerless to do anything about the fact that the header is preventing him from getting a good compile. This this set of code provides definitions that it needs, but it also includes the headers. And so since the headers include the same definitions, there's a conflict between the definitions that are in the headers and in the code. I'd rather just use the definitions that are provided by the code and not screw around with the headers, at least those definitions. So so let's just go for the first run here. Go ahead and open up the terminal. And obviously I copied that. Let's just go ahead and do the do. Now what should end up happening here is that it'll say in this file over here, there's already this definition doesn't match with the definition that's over here in this other place. Now keep in mind I'm not using what was called my specs override. And what that is basically making a copy of all the Haiku headers, putting them in my own directory, and passing a compiler flag to the compiler to look for headers in a particular place and nowhere else, which eliminates any possibility of header clash because we have a lot of header root areas. And for the most part, I haven't seen that the multiple header roots are really causing much of a problem. What I'm really saying is the fact that the end user isn't able to actually change the headers for his own purposes is not a good thing for anybody, whether you use Haiku Porter or you use Pkgsrc. But at least in the Pkgsrc situation, you actually do have a remedy. You're not locked into the situation where parts of your system are simply unchangeable. Let's go let this thing build. It may need library network, but it's not going to fail because of that. I've already got settings in here to deal with that issue. Now the errors look very similar to the library network kind of stuff, but it's not exactly the same. So this is what it starts saying. It basically says, if you look closely enough, there's something here about the Perl header, you know, including this ina.h file from ARPANET. There's another note here about the socket6 file, which is in this directory here, including, you know, this netdb header. And it's basically saying that conflicting types for get name info. And to me, this is just all academic. A lot of these errors are like this, but they're all freaking academic. So if I were to look to the root of the cause, or to go on the mailing list and ask about this, I would say, well, James, since the Perl5-socket6 project isn't POSIX compliant, you know, they ought not to have their code the way it is. So you need to patch your, you know, I don't know what the hell they do about this. So we have a previous declaration of something or other here. Unless I figure out how to restructure the code that someone else has already written to be of the same format and type. I don't know enough about coding to do this. As what's in the header. So basically Haiku's deciding for the P5-socket6 project, how their code should be written when I use it, instead of them deciding how their code should be written when I use it. The compile will fail. So how do we get around this? Well, first of all, you don't necessarily need Pkgsrc to actually do this. So first thing I'm going to do is, since the Perl header is actually including this inet h file, and Perl is installed in Pkgsrc for me, and I've already copied over the inet.h into my include directory. So apparently Pkgsrc will look there first and then look in boot boot system develop headers, in there. So in this case, I am going to edit my well, I want my Perl header to actually read that inet.h. So I actually don't need to I really don't need to change my Perl header, unless of course I didn't revert back before I did this presentation, but I will see, because I actually want to give accurate information when I do this, at least to the extent that I can. Is the code better? Will the package perform better if I use the code that's in the Haiku headers versus the other ones? Well, no one in the Linux world seems to be crying about it or worried about it, so I don't know why I should. Will be incompatible with the kernel that we use, the new OS kernel? I doubt it. Will it be incompatible with other parts of the system? Don't know. But this is how I worked around it, because again, there's no other way to do it, except if you know how to interpret the code that's in the headers and turn that and translate that somehow and go into the complicated code that's provided by this project and do a rewrite to some extent. Which I really don't see why you should have to do that in the first place. So let's look at the Perl header here. This is the Perl header. Let's see if I actually have got... Yeah, I actually do. So that is not the way it would behave originally. In fact, so I'm going to change this back. So this is the way the Perl header originally is. ARPA inet.h. Let's start over again. Let's see what it says. And it's a mess. It's hard to figure out what the hell to do. The first step is to change that. So let's just go back to the work directory and into net. I'm just going to get rid of this. To the trash. Okay, so this now is going to behave the way it would normally. So I've kind of screwed this up already, but hey. So just unzip and decide to start trying to build, and the first thing it'll say in the Perl header, in the file included in the Perl header, this inet.h file, there's a definition that's already been defined that that's conflicting with the code here, and so sorry, we cannot succeed. Now the patch there is just for the make file supplied by Pkgsrc, and Pkgsrc doesn't. That patch doesn't affect this failure. It has no impact on this failure. I also have another set of builds going on in the background. At least I believe I do, in the development category. It just keeps going, just keeps making more and more packages. And the more solutions I get, the more packages it makes. This is what we want. We want people to have packages so they can use the operating system. And there's our error. So now it's saying that, yeah, it's looking for boot system develop headers, POSIX, ARPA, INET-H. Previous declaration of INET NTOP was there. And basically all this is saying is that that definition is being passed on from the Perl header and being passed on even further from socket 6 to this INET NTOP, where this INET NTOP wants to name the type of definition or something, I guess is an integer, I'm not sure. But it really doesn't matter. So the first step to get out of that situation is to actually make a copy of your inet.h header from boot system. Leave the Perl header in place. You have to actually edit the Perl header. Make a backup copy of your Perl header. If you want to revert back when you're done with the build, you can do that. But if you see this kind of verbiage, now you know what to do. Then in the header for the Perl header is actually in the library directory under Perl5. No, it's not. I'm not looking for the Perl header there. I'm actually looking for boot system develop headers. The inet.h is in POSIX under ARPA. There it is. File, copy. Now I'm going to put it where I like to have it. I've actually already got it there, but I'm just going to do it anyway so you can see what I do. Include. And in this case, I don't have it POSIX. I just say that the header root is in include. So I'm just looking for an ARPA subdirectory, and I have it. That's been copied over from Haiku, and I'm just going to put replace. Now this header doesn't interact with any of these others, I don't believe. Or if they do, it doesn't hurt anything. Have it here. It doesn't go any further, in other words. All right, so I have basically hard pathed the inet header to the location that I've actually copied it to. And I save this Perl file. And then we'll see that we'll get back to where we started when I did my first go at it. It'll say, hey, you know, you got this duplicate. But now I can edit my own header. And so that's what I'm going to do. Instead of repeating the first failure that I had, you know what's going to happen. It's going to look the same. It's just going to say that this line right here is going to have, you know, boot home package include instead of boot system develop headers, POSIX, ARPA, inet.h. Same line number, everything. So let's go to line number 35. Make this writable. And it's the NTOP variable. And so we'll relieve ourselves of that burden. And we'll try it again. I think it's going to fail again. There's one other line I need to get rid of. That's okay. I'll just do it. If not, then I won't. So now it's just mentioning, now the error seems to have gone away. Let's see, look at the top, see if that's true. Yeah, now it's only mentioning this netdb header. Well, I also made a copy of the netdb header. And instead of being in the POSIX directory, it's just right down over here. Now I'm just going to do it this way, so that way I don't have to deal with this issue anymore. I could suffer, though, because there may be other programs that likes the way this is laid out and decide that there is an undefined reference. And if I see that, I may copy it back from Haiku. It's just, you know, hopscotch, perhaps. Okay, so here is in the file, sorry, let's see, netdb line 265, basically the header is trying to tell getNameInfo how it's supposed to be coded, and I'd rather just let getNameInfo do it. I believe this is probably line, what's getNameInfo. So I don't need a definition of getNameInfo because this software has already provided it for me. So I'm going to save that. I think it's going to come up again. We'll just do one at a time. So we'll do this. It'll be some other error, some other line. I think it's this other, yeah, getNameInfo, whatever it is. GetName, blah, blah, blah. I think it was just one. It's already at 265. Did I not save that? Oh, I have to change my socket 6 file. Right. So let's go back into the source for this. It's right here. It works. I need to go into the socket 6 file. It's right here. I'll make a duplicate of it. I guess you can call this thing a patch. And this is line number what? No, first of all, I want to find the netdb file in here. There it is. And I don't want to use the uneditable netdb. I want to use a netdb that I could actually do something with. So I'm going to make this boot home package include, and I believe netdb would be in that directory. So if I save this, the edit that I made to the netdb, which was here, which was, I think that this also, I remember this Pkgsrc, but I'll let it fail again. I'm going to have to get rid of this next line right here. But I want you to see that the getNameInfo is going to go away now. Kind of did that out of order. I've already deleted the getNameInfo line, and the only one that's going to remain is, there it is, the Pkgsrc, which I don't need, want, or be bothered with. Do that. And I have a package. So if I didn't have the ability to edit my own, okay, so what's the difference between being a Pkgsrc and Haiku porter, at least at this stage? Well, I wouldn't have been able to edit that Perl header the way I did. As far as it just be read-only. If there's a Perl header provided by the system in boot system developed headers, you can't write to that, so you're screwed. But you're not really screwed. You can copy down that header, and then you can look for all the others, just lines and lines of other headers that are included in that Perl header, other parts of Perl that it wants to also include in the Perl header. And so you can get, that's what I call header hell. You just copy it down, copy it down, copy. And you have to edit each one of these things to path it to the, to the Perl header that you've copied down, because now that's, the pathing in this program looks for just a Perl in quotes, and apparently that works to get it up to the Perl header. But not the rest, unless the Perl headers that it's reading is actually the Perl header that's inside the boot home package library core i386 Haiku 5.20.0 directory, because all the other headers that the Perl header wants to include are also in there. So you can end up copying. You can go work on this for an hour and a half, and finally, if you get everything included right, yeah, you'll have a build, and you'll have, like I have with Python 34, numerous patches that are actually just headers that are a few directories away, for some reason aren't able to be read, and so the build turns out a lot worse than it should be. Not to mention the test Unicode issue that comes up. That's Python 34. But so now I mostly got to go. I have a better build of Python 34 than I have of 27. But luckily I spent more time on that. So there it is. It's there. I already had it installed. So now I'm not gonna have that barrier in my way to building Git. I might have others, but you know. So now what's left in my system? I have 2 Haiku headers that are trimmed down, and I have a Perl header pointing to one of the Haiku headers in its trimmed down state. So I can do one of 2 things, and I don't know enough to judge how common this particular error is, or sets of errors or problems or whatever you want to call it, to say that I'm not going to sit here and say that the code in the netdb.h header is erroneous. It may be good or better than the code that's provided by the the Perl5-socket6 project itself. Or it might not be. It may be just as good. It may make no difference. It's just that the damn thing won't compile because, and I understand. I mean, when you start writing headers, you probably want to start with headers in a form that is probably going to match most of the code out there is going to expect, and the only real baseline is POSIX. I completely understand that. But on the other hand, when we're it gets to a point where it's kind of like awesome. Well, what do I do? If I change this, it might build for these things, but it won't build for these other things. Yeah, you could think that, but at the same time, realize that if you look, say, at the BSD headers as an example, I don't think they have that kind of juggling act that they have to do with their headers. So quite honestly, I think that the way that's written is just frankly problematic, even though it comes straight out of the POSIX manual, I'm pretty sure. But our unwillingness to even consider changing those things to allow things to compile is, to my mind, one of the reasons why Haiku hasn't made the headway that it should, given all the other good things that it provides. And that's just a fact. I mean, facts, you don't want facts to be offensive. Sometimes I guess they are. I don't quite understand it. But people get offended when they try to point facts out, and then they're just told to piss off. So anyway, that's the deal. And so I'm just going to stop here. I'm going to keep trying to build my chat stuff. But if I find anything significant, I'll put it up. But what do I do for patches with this? Well, I'll probably put a copy of the pull header that I've modified in my solution directory, a note, and the 2 modified versions of the headers, netdb and init-h, from the ARPA directory in my Git repository, and explain what had to be done to get this damn thing to build. So, because it's not something you can just do with a patch is just going to fix. Patches don't usually go out and hunt down system files and edit them for you. But at the same time, you could try to get Pkgsrc to do this kind of thing. But again, you have to have write access to your own directory to even be able to make the changes that you need to make. Otherwise, you're absolutely forced to rewrite code, and it may not be clear or apparent how to do that, even if you knew how to code. It may not. I don't know. It seemed like on one of the variables I was able to, I first tried to actually change the code, and it seemed like one of the variables just wanted to be called a const char, I guess constant character. I don't know what the fuck that means. I mean, I only have a very basic C coding book, and they talk about, well, there's two things. There's integers and there's characters, and I don't know where, okay, so I guess those are characters, but I don't know how to, I guess I could change the int to char, but that still didn't work. And then it started just cascading. Other lines wanted things over here, and they just forget it. So, I finally looked at the error, and I realized that the code already had its own definitions it wanted to use. I realized I really didn't need the definitions that were provided by the Haiku headers to be able to get what I wanted. So I decided to edit them. Does that mean there's a bug in Haiku? No, not necessarily. Does it mean there's a bug in the program? Not necessarily. It's just a clash, basically, and this kind of thing happens, and I bet you that there's it's hard to estimate what the clash rate would be, but just, it'd be an easy 5%. And 5% gets big when you have when it involves dependencies. So that's all I have for now, but if I find anything else interesting, I'll come back, obviously, and if I have any updates, I will, every once in a while, come back and say what my stats are, how things are going, or things like that. I might have a few things to put up, but I'm not sure. It's been a while.